And now we welcome in the general manager of the New York Football Giants, Joe Schoen. Joe, congratulations. You can get to sleep now, at least a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. I'm looking forward to that. Never sleep this weekend because you're coming off a high of taking a good player and you're thinking about the next day. So definitely looking forward to catching up on some rest.
All right, so let's talk about the guys you guys managed to bring in over the last 3 days. Let's start with Abdul Carter. If you would have just watched him as an edge player, you get one analysis. But you got to watch him for 2 years as an off-ball linebacker first. So how did your ability to see him play that other position help enhance your evaluation of him as a guy that you're probably going to use more on the edge?
Naturally, when you turn the film on when he was a freshman, you see him in that 11 jersey, you automatically think of Micah because you see this guy playing side to side. He's fast, he's violent, plays his butt off. He could blitz. He can do all the things that Abdul did when he was there. So, or Micah did, as Micah did. So as you continue to progress and watch him grow, you knew he was a good player as a freshman. So then he played his sophomore year, was balling, off the ball. And then this year to see him transition to edge and have as much success as he did was very impressive. And his ability to bend and disrupt, and they would still use him in various different ways off the ball, which was also attractive to us with the guys that we have, that he has the versatility that we can move him around with pieces like Dex and Kayvon and Burns and Chauncey, here as well. So gives us some chess pieces to move around. So he's going to be an important part of our defense, this coming fall.
Joe, when everybody looks at his tape, they all said, well, he's a blue chipper, so we kind of all see the obvious stuff. What did you learn about him that you did not know that enhanced his grade during the final process of the studying?
Yeah, the film, I'm not sure if I could get any higher on his grade just based off of that. But then you meet the kid and he's all ball. Like the amount of information he knew about the New York Giants, the history of the New York Giants. And when we were having conversations at dinner or in the building, they were all football questions. There was no small talk. There was no worried about his brand or this or that or where he's going to live. Like, it was all ball. How are you going to utilize me? Where do I fit in? All that stuff. You already heard the jersey number stuff that came up and got shot down. So, but just his passion for football, his understanding of the history of the game. And then he's a dog. Like, he's a tough kid that's all ball all the time. And, meeting his parents and getting to know them, and the way his dad trained him when he was a kid, and so the work ethic's there. He was raised right, and then you can see that come through with the passion and energy that he plays with.
We know because he did change positions after the first 2 years. He himself said to us in his media avail that he thinks he's just touched the surface as an edge rusher because he's only done it for a year. When you look at his upside and the development that he will now have when he gets more reps as an edge rusher, what do you see there?
Yeah, the physical traits are freaky. The initial quickness, the bend. And again, a lot of times if you're bending the corner against a tackle, they can push you out behind the quarterback. But he's got a freaky ability to flatten to the quarterback, and a little bit like what Von Miller could do, or I was in Miami with Cam Wake. The great ones can really bend the corner and fight that side pressure. And he can do that. And like you said, like he's only played the position for a year. And Charlie Bullen, has a really good resume. He's with a very good coach, and he can help. He can also learn from Burns and Kayvon, with their experience. Chauncey, and then Dre Patterson. We had him look at him too, who was up in Minnesota, and they had drafted Anthony Barr back in the day. So that was a little bit of comp of how they used Anthony Barr when he was in Minnesota. So he's got notes upon notes upon notes, different schemes in which how they used Anthony Barr. So, again, the versatility is cool, but, coming off the edge, like you're going to have to know where he is. You're going to have to know where he is. And then you're going to have to know where Dex is, and you're probably going to have to know where Burns is and Kayvon. So it's going to be interesting, how it all comes together. It looks good on paper right now, but, they got to gel as a team and a unit, and, we got to figure out how to get everybody on the field.
All right, let's jump to Jackson Dart. Quarterback evaluation question in general, something we've talked a lot about on our programming this year. We have access to watch video, but we don't have the access to the players that you do. And we always talk about how difficult it is, I think, to figure out how a quarterback processes and makes decisions if you don't know what the coach is teaching them to do and what they're being told to do. So what are the tools you guys use to kind of get to the bottom of that, get beyond the film? Is it talking to the college coaches? Is it when he meets with Daves on the visits? How do you kind of get inside the processing, decision-making part of the quarterback position, which really might be the most important stuff?
Yeah, it starts it'll start probably next week. We'll start looking at next year's guys. It's always an emphasis for us to look at the future class of quarterbacks so we can map out our fall and go watch them. So you're going to watch the film, you're going to go see live games, and our scouts do a phenomenal job of going to the schools and utilizing their resources to get the background on the players, because that's important. You're the quarterback of a franchise or the face of a franchise. How you interact with staff members, how you represent, whichever university you play at, how you treat your teammates, your leadership. Those are all things that are very important that we get from the schools in the fall. And then, we transition into our own process once the season's over, which starts at the Senior Bowl, where we can meet with the players and bring up their film and exactly what you said. What are you looking at here? What do you call this? Can you recall your plays? That, and then we'll get into our own stuff. And that's where, I really believe in our process, and it's a little bit more stringent maybe than most in terms of how we test these guys, what we put them through. And, that starts when we bring them in on 30 visits or we go, for privates, but it's apples to apples. Everybody's getting tested the same way. So whether it was all the way back, the first time Daves and I did this was Andy Dalton, Ryan Mallett, Blaine Gabbert, that draft all the way to, even last year's draft when we took Josh Allen. So it's tested over time. It's, again, it's apples to apples. So everybody's put through the same thing. And, it's proven to be successful. A lot of the players that ace the process have went on to be really good quarterbacks in the league. So it's the film, it's the person, it's the leadership, it's the capacity, the mental capacity that you have to have at the quarterback position.
And then specific to Jackson, he's playing in a system run by a head coach that used to be in the NFL. Joe Judge is there, and I think Lane Kiffin does a really good job of setting things up for the quarterback, right? Opens things up, makes some of these decisions a little bit easier. So how do you take Jackson out of the structure he's in at Ole Miss and figure out how he's going to operate in a different structure, in a different system here with the Giants?
Yeah. Every position we evaluate, we always say it's a projection business. As a college scout, your job is to project what that's going to look like in the NFL. Pro scouting is a little bit easier. Hey, if I want to go watch Paulson Adebo, let me go watch him against a really good receiver in the league. Okay, so it's you're watching pros versus pro,
and also in a specific scheme you can find too, right?
Yeah. All right, let me go watch all of his press reps versus a Pro Bowl receiver. You can go do that. Where college, you have to project. So what we try to do is you're going through the film, we'll do cut-ups or we'll talk about it. Okay, where are the anticipatory throws? Where is he throwing before a guy gets out of his break? Because you're going to have to do that at our level. Where is he going from first read, second read, third read? Where is he stepping up in the pocket? Where is a linebacker about to put his helmet right under his chin and he stands in there and delivers? So RPO offense, whatever it is, if guys are running wide open, you maybe fast forward past those plays, but where are the plays that are going to look like what they're going to look like on Sunday, and how does he perform in those situations? So you do that every year with the quarterbacks because, these college offenses are different. They're going tempo. Sometimes it's like 7-on-7. They're not getting pressured. So,
and it's almost like the same 7 to 10 concepts, and they just kind of spam them just from different formations, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It really is. And again, when they go quick and they don't get pressured at time, that's great. They should be able to complete those passes. But what stood out with Jackson as you go through it, like talk about a guy that'll stand in there, stare down the barrel, take a hit, and deliver the ball accurately. There's a lot of clips of those. On film. So that's what it's going to be like on Sundays.
Well, Joe, you set yourself up by getting the veterans in the room, which you told everybody you were going to do, so that you don't have to rush Jackson Dart into the lineup. But as you develop him during his rookie season, Daves is going to figure out how the practice schedule is going to work and how many reps he gets. But what will you look for as you see his rookie season progress? What are the developmental keys that you will want to see? Because I'm sure as the months go on, you're going to want to make sure his progression and his learning curve is what you want it to be.
You always expect growing pains, especially with a young quarterback. I mean, it's going to happen. These guys are bigger, faster, stronger. You have more on your plate mentally. So there's going to be growing pains. How does he react when the growing pains occur, when you throw an interception and when the media gets on you in your first practice and you come out here and you throw 2 interceptions your first day of camp?
And they will.
And you're a bust and you're never going to play. How do you react? So how's he going to react when the adversity strikes or people are getting on him? And then to me, it's more about establishing a pro routine and how to go about your week. And, you really got to be structured at the quarterback position because you have to know so much. It's different in college where you may only put in 2 or 3 more plays in a week. It's still the same offense where it's week to week here. Like we may be putting in 15 to 20 new plays or, whatever it may be. So to me, it's really him coming in. We're fortunate to have the 2 veterans that are here Tommy was a young player a couple years ago. So, I could see Jackson just really sitting back, looking how these guys, approach their weekly process. And to me, that's the biggest thing for him, come up with a process and then execute it and just be ready to go. Like he has to prepare like he's going to play because you never know when injuries occur. So to me, that's the biggest thing for him.
All right, we'll run through these rest of these guys a little bit quicker here. Darius Alexander, older prospect, 25, but I think he's going to be 25. But when you look at the tape, I think in a smaller school, obviously not as big of a weight program as we'll have here in the NFL, but also you see so many tools and you see so much room for growth with how he's going to use those tools, right? So how did you kind of play an older prospect against lesser competition, but also there's so much promise here for him to get better? How did you kind of weigh those two things against each other?
Yeah, we've, 3 techniques usually go, and they go pretty quick. And then, like Milton Williams this year in New England got $26 million. So these guys are getting paid a lot of money.
They're valuable.
So, you always think, hey, if we can find somebody, that can rush next to Dexter, because there's a lot of times there's 4 hands on him, they're sliding to him and they're, they're double teaming him. So we're always looking for interior pass rush. And this is a player that we identified in the fall. Brendan Prophet, our area scout, did a really good job early on so we could get eyes on him. And, then seeing him at the Senior Bowl, that's where, again, sometimes schematically they're asked to read and react. Maybe they're not allowed to get upfield and get on edges and work pass rush moves. I mean, that's just the way some of the schemes are. So once we're able to look at him at the Senior Bowl in the one-on-ones, staggered stance, get off the ball, rush the passer, you can see all the physical tools there. And then, we're fortunate to have a coach like, Andre Patterson and Brian Cox here who have a history of developing young players and are motivated to work with a guy like Darius. So, we're excited to see him. We have a lot of depth there. We have some veteran players that he can learn from as well. And, we can bring him along slowly if we need to.
Joe, one of the things that struck me when I saw you got him was because of some of his versatility, as well as the veterans that you signed in free agency with versatility. I wondered how much of that was a priority in your offseason as you added defensive line to give your defensive coordinator, Shane Bowen, an opportunity to do more mixing and matching and moving guys around than you could last year.
Yeah, definitely. The more jobs you can do, the better it is, and the more hats you can wear, it easier it is for Shane. So it allows us to free up a Dexter or a Burns or a Kayvon or Chauncey or, now with Darius or, Abdul. So like you got a lot of guys that can do a lot of different things on defense. So we didn't go into it necessarily thinking about that, but we'll keep at, that's where it was last night. I'm like, we're adding another 3 technique and Chauncey can rush inside and Dex, and like, let's just keep adding them. Let's just keep adding good football players. You can never have enough pass rushers inside or outside. So to say, hey, it was, going into the offseason, hey, we're just going to bolster the defense and use all of our, a lot of our resources for that. That wasn't the case. But, like I said, in free agency, if there's not top tier guards or there's not a number 1 receiver or sometimes those players don't get to the market. So you're at the mercy of what the market is presenting itself. And we're fortunate to get, a starting corner and a safety and some other depth pieces. So, that's the way it worked out. But I'm excited about the pieces we added, and Darius will be a big part of the team this fall.
At the Combine, Joe, so many people make a big deal about the 40-yard dash, especially with the running backs. I wonder, running backs, they're not running in a straight line for 40 yards very often. To me, it's making guys miss, breaking tackles in short areas, and that's what Cam Scatterbo has really excelled at. Yeah. When you compare the overall top speed versus that kind of short area stuff, which is more valuable and why for the Giants?
Yeah, the short area is obviously important. Now, there's different type of backs. As you go through the draft, hey, if you need a third down back, this guy's 195 pounds. He can catch out of the backfield and go. Yeah. And then you have a Scatterbo category where, this guy is, again, he may have not ran as fast as people wanted him to, but his 10 times really good. He's got a 39.5-inch vertical. So the short, explosive, between the tackles, he has all of that. Not to mention, the physicality, the strength, the contact balance really stands out with him. And it's not like you can't run toss sweeps with him and stuff like that, because you can, and his vision's really good, and he's got really good hands. So again, you're sitting there all last night. I couldn't sleep, and I'm like, the guy's a football player. The guy's a good football player. Like, you can never go wrong adding good football players, and that's how I feel about the kid. Like, you sleep good at night because he's going to do everything he can do for the New York Giants, so he can go out there and perform at his best, and he's a darn good football player.
I wonder about that other part of the personnel file there, Joe, because sometimes it's the intangibles also that can put a guy maybe a little bit over the top from somebody who may have been evenly graded. Scatterbo strikes me as a guy who brings a lot of that Brandon Jacobs atmosphere for the Giants fans from years ago, where he makes one of those physical runs and maybe knocks a guy over. like the whole team gets inspired by it. It's almost like he can electrify a spark. Is that part of what you enjoyed knowing about him?
Yeah, absolutely. And you see it, and he gets up and he's got some swagger to him, which is cool. But you think about what we've added over the last 2 years. Theo's a dog. I mean, he's tough as all get out. Tyrone Tracy, Malik, and then you add a Scatabo, and then Dart. Yeah, we gotta walk him back a little bit. I mean, he's him running linebackers over. Like, I don't really want him doing that, but like, these guys play with a certain mentality, and we wanted to add tough guys that love football and are passionate about it. And you can see it in all those guys I just mentioned. You can see it in all their play, and on the college tape, that really stands out. With Dart and Scatabo, when the ball's in their hand, they're carrying it, whatever it may be. Just the toughness, the physicality, and the love for the game.
Let me combine Bo and Fidone into one question here. What struck me about both guys is how athletic they are. Bo's feet, maybe not the longest arms, but man, he can move. He's very agile. And then, Fidone's coming from a system in Nebraska where maybe not a ton of production, but man, his testing was great. And you watch him at the Senior Bowl, he could move. Is that, when you're getting late in the process, are you looking for those guys with those traits that you think you can develop into something here?
Yeah, absolutely. Always tell the coaches, like, they want, give me something I can't coach. Okay, well, you can't coach 4-4 or what, whatever it is, or feet like that. It's hard for me to improve somebody's athleticism. You can't do that. Their toughness, like you can't improve that. So there's some technical things that coaches can improve, but 6'5", 260, or the size, you can't. So both of those guys, have the athleticism and the traits that you look for. Bo, you mentioned the arm length. Now, we measured these guys several times. So his arms were 33 at an All-Star game. They came back at 32
and a half, right? Yeah,
so we had him on a visit. They're 33. So
okay, there you go.
Kansas spinach, Joe.
Yeah. We did it ourselves. His arms were 33. Yeah, and then Tim Kelly went out to Nebraska and did a private workout
nice.
with Thomas and got to spend time with him. And he was at the Senior Bowl, and Angela Baker.
And Bake had her, right?
Before she left. So again, the last 2 years, hats off to the coaching staff. Early January, they get an opportunity to coach these games, and they're all for it. And they go down there and they coach these kids on their free time when the rest of the staff is off. And it's invaluable information that we get when they can be around these kids. So, hats off to Dave's and his staff. And, obviously my scouting staff does a great job as well. But that's a competitive advantage for me that I really appreciate the coaches, taking advantage of.
Final player was Corey Black, the corner that you guys took. A lot of people have the perception that when you get to the 7th round, you're looking for like special teams guys. He did play some special teams and did well at it. How much of his corner skills also were a part of your decision to take him?
Yeah, he's got a chance to do both. Yeah, special teams. When you look at our current depth chart and 7th rounders, a lot of time, how do you go to the game? Well, you need to be Gobi's best friend and you need to be able to play special teams. And this kid has a history of it. So again, speaking of the coaching staff, those guys up there do a phenomenal job. Cam, Stephen Thomas, and Gobi. The amount of players that they watch throughout the draft that they may or may not play on special teams, but they'll go watch their offense or defensive film and project based on their play style. So they cover the draft A to Z. They do so much. It's great. And he was a guy that they pointed out and said, hey, we'd like to work with this kid. I mean, 6 foot, he's 200 pounds. He ran 4.3. Again, what can I coach? You can't coach that into him. So, a guy, a height, weight, speed guy that has special teams value and can also play on defense. He's a press corner that's physical in the run game. So again, you look for traits that you can develop and give him a chance to hang on the roster. And both of those 7th round picks, check those boxes.
Joe, we appreciate the time. You got to run upstairs. You guys are already calling undrafted free agents, I'm sure. Is this a much thicker UDFA class because you have the last year of COVID, all the extra years, and it's just a larger draft class? Is this going to be a better group of UDFAs in general than we've seen the last couple of years?
I don't think so. It's funny because we normally have about 140 players on our board this year, and I was complaining to the scouts all along. We had about 165 guys, so we had 25 more players on the board. And as we kept going through it in the meetings, I'm like, we got way too many guys in the 5th round. We got way too many guys in the 6th round. Like, this is too many. It's too muddy. It's too muddy. And we get to the 7th round, and
they're all God.
Every player that is on our board is in the 7th round, and we've got like 6 names. So. Wow. It worked out that, again, we had more names, but there were more draftable players. So the free agent class may not be as good, but again, we've been able to find, Ryder Anderson the first year, Chat last year, came in, made the team. That was an undrafted free agent. So, Tommy DeVito made the team. So there's players that you can find that, become contributors for the team. So, we're going to go up there, and that's where the scouts can make their money. Happy hunting.
Go get them, Joe. Thank you very much.
Right,
Appreciate the time. Joe Schoen, General Manager of the New York Football Giants.